This podcast is being managed by What's Podcasting. Check the link in the description to find out more. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another conversation. Today, I am doing a solo podcast because I want to believe that I also have insights to give people. And basically, today, I'm going to focus on a very important measure of knowing if Nigerians are richer or poorer every single year, which is basically through the price of food and of food items basically in the country. The National Bureau of Statistics, that is the NBS, just a few days past had released the food price watch for March 2024, and there are certain things that I found interesting. So as usual, I went to do a bit of an analysis about, like the reports and basically the implications it will have on the average Nigerian. Are you ready? Okay. So let me just start by asking you a question. How many times do you think you can buy bread, Garri, and chicken in Nigeria monthly? Like, I mean, the three things together. If I was to say, okay, can you, individual listener, buy bread, Garri, and chicken together, the three together, in Nigeria? If you say yes, okay, then the next question I'll ask you, like, how many times can you actually buy it, right? So by this I mean, can you buy it at least once a week? Can you buy it once a month? Can you buy it 2 times or 3 times a month, right? Why is this question important? The question is important because it kind of gives us, the insight into the initial question that I was curious about, which is basically the extent to which Nigerians are becoming richer or even poorer. But before I start, right, and before I start to really talk about bread, curry, and chicken, I first want to talk about a report that was released. Whoa, that report was not nice. A report that was released by Cowrywise. Cowrywise, earlier this month in April, released a Cowrywise simplified report, which is basically this reports that they do for their consumers. It's actually funny because I don't think I own any carry. I just have an account and I receive the reports. Well, thank God for that. Anyways, they released this report, and basically within the report we find a classification of Nigerians by income group, right? So the reasoning for that, right, and the report really focused, the Cowrywise report was more focused on the high net worth individuals in Nigeria, that is the HNI. But if you want to find the high net worth, you also have to cast the poor guys. So they provided the context for everybody. So in that report, we know how much you earn if you're in the bottom 50% in Nigeria, how much you will earn if you're in the middle 40%, in the top 10%, and in the top 1%. Let's just take a moment and guess. Who wants to be a millionaire? I am Frank. So, how much do you think the top 1% in Nigeria earns monthly? Option number 1, 1.5 million naira. Option number 2, 3.2 million naira. Option number 3, 8.4 million naira. Option number 4, 4 million naira. Your answer? Your answer? Okay, I could not actually hear. But anyways, the answer is actually 4 million naira. To be in the top 1% in Nigeria, you have to earn an average 4 million naira every single month. This is, by the standard of the world, low. In Nigeria, I understand it's a lot. I have actually written a post about this analysis on my LinkedIn. If you are interested, just go to my LinkedIn, check out check out my under my profile, just go to my post and check out basically You know what? I'm going to put it for you as a link in the description, and then you'll be able to read it. But I did an analysis of this and how, like, being top 1% in Nigeria does not mean you're a big boy in London. on. But going back to the main focus of today's insights, being top 1% in Nigeria, you have to earn 4 million naira, right? Okay, if we know this, and if we know the same for bottom 50%, 63,000 naira, for the middle 40% and the top 10%, then we can start to make certain assumptions and play around with how much you know about Nigerians as a whole, right? The price, according to the National Bureau of Statistics Food Price Watch, which is the report that was released some days back, the price of frozen chicken in March 2024 was 4,564 naira 58 kobo. The price of sliced bread, 500 gram of sliced bread, was 1,109 naira 15 kobo. God, it's so painful saying these numbers. But the price of white Garri was 749 naira and 84 kobo. I can remember when I used to buy a mudu of Garri with like 200, or was it 100 or something, in Garki markets in Nigeria. This is actually sad to see and sad to actually talk about. But let's continue and ask ourselves, okay, how likely are you to actually provide bread, Garri, and chicken? Monthly or weekly or twice a month, if that is your case. So, if you are in the bottom 50%, buying these three items, that is the frozen chicken, sliced bread, and white Garri. And of course, if it's frozen chicken, there's implication because you have to buy gas, and then of course your gas has to burn. And if it's frozen chicken, it might take longer as opposed to agri chicken. You get the drill. This is just looking at just the price of getting these things. We do not even add the price of the time, the Maggi, like the rice and stew that will follow it. Anyways, let's just leave that for now and just focus about the three prices, right? The price of frozen chicken, 4,500, sliced bread, 1,100, and white Garri, 750 naira. If you're in the bottom 50%, essentially to afford this once a month, I remember the bottom 50% awards, they earn monthly 63,000 naira. If you are in this bottom 50%, to buy this once a month, you have to spend 10% of your monthly income. If you want to be a bigger boy, and you want to buy this twice a month, obviously it will be 20% of your income. What about if you want to, be the baddest guy alive, earning 65,000 naira, and you want to buy frozen chicken, sliced bread, and white Garri monthly? Well, this will cost about 41% of your monthly income. That is actually insane. When we look at it from the middle 40%, that is basically, where most likely a lot of people will be. Well, depending on who you are, but I guess for people living in Abuja and Lagos, you probably are around this area. If you look at, the middle 40%, who earn averagely 363,750 naira, they will be able to afford frozen chicken, sliced bread, and white Garri once a month, and it will cost them 1.7% of their monthly salaries. If they do that twice a month, it will cost them 3.5% of their monthly salaries. And if they do that weekly, being the baddest guys ever, it will cost them 7% of their monthly salaries. So as you can see, right, it's not that easy. Eating chicken, I'm sure you knew that, but it's not that easy even eating sliced bread and white Garri anymore. I also kind of wanted to know further things, right? Not just as relating to chicken, sliced bread, and white Garri, but also based on the prices of food in March, what can we know more generally about Nigeria? Well, if a Nigerian family in the bottom 50% was to survive on Garri just Garri alone, right? The white Garri. And basically, let's assume that they consume only 8 kg of Garri in a month, right? 8 kg of Garri, they're on their way to blindness. They're like Moses at this point, at the age of 80, with walking stick, that kind of thing. If they were to survive on 8 kg of Garri in a month and you're in the bottom 50%, that would still be 10% of their monthly income. That is for Garri. I'm not talking about chicken. No, for Garri, if you earn 65,000 naira and you wanted to buy 8 kg, that's kilograms of Garri in a month, it will still cost you 10% of your monthly income. If you now want to be a bit more, diverse, add the nutrients, and you were to add 4 kilograms of local rice, that particular earner will have to spend 18% of their income monthly to get these two food items together. That is, 4 kg of local rice in a month and 8 kg of Garri will cost them 80% of their monthly income. Again, this does not take into account the time that you buy, the sugar that you use for the Garri, the milk, if that is your thing, or even the water that you have to buy, the pure water that you have to buy to be able to take this Garri, right? So again, we're seeing a situation whereby it is just much more expensive to live in Nigeria. Of course, for the bottom 50%, much more. But even for the middle 40%, I'm not going to talk about the top 10% and top 1%, because honestly, like if you earn 4 million naira in Nigeria, or you earn about 870,000 naira in Nigeria, yes, you can complain, but at least you can afford chicken, bread, and Garri monthly. Do you know what? If you are in the top 1%, no, the top 10% for a lot of the tech bros that earn 870,000 naira in Nigeria, basically, to afford it weekly, you will only spend 3% of your monthly salary on affording sliced bread, white Garri, and frozen chicken weekly, which of course is a very different situation as if you only earn 65,000 and you have to spend 40% of your income. And the thing is that this is true across many products. So in my analysis, which I will also leave in the link in the description, I looked at 7 food items, even though in the National Bureau of Statistics report there are actually 43. And in this 7, there is the price of sliced bread, unsliced bread, frozen chicken, yam tuber, white Garri, brown beans, beef, boneless beef, and local rice, right? And it's a bit scary if we start to look at the change in the prices of goods and services. Honestly, how scary? Okay, let's see if you can buy it. So for boneless chicken, 1 kg of boneless chicken, which is basically the meat that we know, right? The meat that we fry and we eat during Christmas, that one, yes. To get 1 kg of that in 2023 will cost you 2,479 naira. But guess what? If you were to take if you were basically to buy that in March 2024, it will cost you 4,309 naira. That essentially, for boneless chicken is a yearly increase of 73.7%. When we look at, let's imagine yam tuber. Yeah, yam guy. Yeah, no Irish potato. Never. I am for yam, right? So to buy that your 1 tuber of yam, or about 1 kg of yam, in March 2023, you just had to spend 443 naira. But, in March 2024, you have to spend 1,068 naira, 78 kobo on average in Nigeria. So, of course, even for yam, this was a yearly increase of 141%, which is still a lot. Even month on month, that is between February and March, the prices are still quite ridiculous, like the change in prices. So if we look at yam still, the prices change from February to March by 5.8%, within a month, right? If you look at boneless chicken, this price actually changed by 17.91%. Basically, the price, if you went to the market in February, you came back to in March to buy that same beef, boneless beef, 1 kg of it, the price will have gone up by 20%, right? And this, of course, taking into account your different income class again, will be challenging, because how do you even budget? Like, you budget, oh, I want to pay 20,000 for food this month. You go to the market, and what you used to buy 20,000, about 20% of it now has increased, like the prices have increased. So you have to start sacrificing on the spot, right? The food you will not eat for that particular month. Why? Because if you come back tomorrow, probably the price is up again by 1%. Anyways, there's also another way I wanted to understand this data, which is basically, so which states have like the highest number of poor of expensive foods? That is, there's a classification of the 43 items that the National Bureau of Statistics show. And I wanted to know like which states have more expensive food items under their states. So, for each of the 43 items, so let's imagine the local rice, the chicken, the white Garri, sliced bread, unsliced bread, there is a ranking of, where is it most expensive, and where is it least expensive, right? And basically what I wanted to know is which countries in the most expensive aspect, right, appear the most, and which countries in the least expensive aspect appear the least. I mean, there's more in the story, and context is very, very important. So we cannot categorically say X is Y, but we can assume, right, that there might be a correlation between expensive prices and this kind of states, especially as regards those kind of products, and least expensive prices and the price of those kind of products around our states. So let's actually look at it. So Delta State was the state that had the most occurrence of expensive products. They appeared 4 times in terms of, out of the 43 items with the most expensive food. The food include boned beef, so beef with bone, ripe plantain, tomato, and pre-packed golden penny wheat flour, 2 kg. There are other states that appeared 3 times. There were several actually. They include Lagos, Ebonyi, Ogun, Ondo, and Edo states, right? And each of them had a monthly appeared 3 times in terms of the ranking of how many products they had in their state that was the most expensive across the country on average. In Lagos State, the 3 items that was really expensive, was fresh catfish, obukun, tilapia fish, epia, and then Titus frozen. So it's only big boys, it looks like, that eat fish in Lagos, because all the 3 items are related to fish. So you might be better off eating meat in Lagos than actually eating fish. My reasoning is, I might be wrong in this, but like the kinds of soup that's being cooked there might require just much more obstacles. And most of these obstacles are like fish related, aside obviously the pomo, etc. Maybe people will start noticing now and start changing their obstacles to more meat based varieties. What if we flip it, right, and we ask ourselves, okay, what about in the least expensive states, right? That is, for the 43 items, and in the ranking of the 43 items, we know that certain states have highest, like the price of the food is highest in that state, and in other states the price of the food is lower. Which states have the highest occurrence whereby the food is lower? Well, the state that had the most was Borno State with 7, followed by Zamfara State with 6 food items, and Yobe State with 4 food items. Basically, between these 3, 17 out of 43 food items, right, they house where it is cheapest to get in Nigeria generally. If you're in Borno State and you're asking yourself, what are these 7 products that are actually cheap? Well, the first is, agricultural eggs, agric egg. Then you also have ripe plantain, agric rice, um, high quality imported rice, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, probably means, like rice that was just imported at a particular company that they like. Then you have tilapia fish, vegetable oil, pre-packed golden penny wheat flour, 2 kg. If you're in Zamfara and you're asking yourself, oh, what are these 6 products, right? Well, they include broken or father rice, exported thin milk, 170 grams of it, if you know like what they are, the iced sardine, white maize grain, yellow maize grain, and onions, basically onion bulb. Essentially what we see is that, it looks like at the end of the day, prices are actually much cheaper in northern Nigeria than prices are cheaper in, southern Nigeria. That is, if I was in the bottom 50%, right, what this is telling us is that I might be able to afford more food items monthly if I was in the north than if I was in the south, right? Of course, this again lacks context in the sense that, probably the bottom 50% in the south might earn more than the bottom 50% in the north, which is another story altogether. And at the end of the day, right, when we actually contextualize it, it might probably be the same issue across based on the actual amount that each bottom 50%, both in the north and the south, gets relative to the price of the items. And of course, as is reported across just many many reports, northern Nigeria tends to be poorer in terms of like income and in terms of just like household net worth, I would say, than in southern Nigeria. So that is one thing we can see from the price of food and services. When we now want to look at, for the 7 prices that I mentioned, right, where is it most expensive and where is it least expensive? Let me just tell you guys. So if you were to buy local rice, the most expensive place you can buy local rice in Nigeria is Niger State. If you're in Niger State, and don't go and buy local rice because basically you're paying the most. Either like a lot of people in Niger State really 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 like local rice, or there's just so much shortage of local rice. Like the demand is way more than the supply, and like people are not just, probably retailers or farmers are not just bringing more of local rice into the nation. If the cheapest place you can buy local rice is Benue State, at 985 naira. What about boneless beef? The most expensive place to buy boneless beef is in Kwara State, whilst the cheapest place is also Benue State. What about brown beans? The most expensive place is in Ondo State, whilst the least expensive place is in Sokoto State. For white garri, if you're in Ogun, that is the most expensive place to buy white garri, and the cheapest place is still in Benue for white garri. If you want to buy yam tubers, Edo State is the most expensive, whilst Katsina is the least expensive. For frozen chicken, Enugu, as I mentioned before, is the most expensive, and Borno State is the least expensive. For sliced bread, if you're in River State, it is the most expensive, and the least expensive is in Yobe State. And if you want on sliced bread, if you're in Edo State, that's where it is most expensive, and in Yobe State it is least expensive. So basically we see again, right, in the least expensive states of the 7 items that I've mentioned, all of them are basically in the north. Yes, Benue is in north central, Benue and Kwara, but they are still in the north, as opposed to basically the highest prices of food from the states that I mentioned, where just Kwara and Niger State are from the north out of the 7. So 2 out of 7, whereas 7 out of 7 is from the north when it comes to least expensive. I mean, as I said again, it might be that yes, being in the bottom 50% is better being in the north, but you have to contextualize that in asking yourself, okay, how much do people actually earn in the different places. So in northern Nigeria and in southern Nigeria, do the bottom 50% really end the same? I do not think so. And that is because there is a study by the McKinsey basically, that analyze micro regional growth perspectives, and what they found was that if you take Nigeria from a micro regional perspective, that is, if you take certain communities or you take certain zones within Nigeria, so not like northeast or northwest, but like look at Abuja, or you look at Lagos, right? And even in Abuja, you look at perhaps Garki and Asokoro, that kind of thing. They find, that there are differences in how income prices, right, and just basically the standard of living people have across Nigeria. And of course, as we know from the poverty statistics, as we also know from just other statistics that help us to gauge the average income of people and the quality of jobs in both the north and the south, we see a different story. So again, we can't just generalize and say, oh, it is cheaper in the north being in the bottom 50% as opposed to the south, and you most likely be able to buy bread, Garri and Chicken if you're in the north than in the south. That you wouldn't be wrong in saying that, but also create the necessary caveats, just the necessary precaution to say that, but this is dependent on how much, like the prices are really in the north and in the south. Anyways, that is all for this insight session. And I hope you enjoyed it, you learned, and you also perhaps will be more interested in the subsequent food price watch by the National Bureau of Statistics, or you can just come back here next month. I hope you have a nice day. Thank you for listening. This podcast is managed by Word Podcasting, a podcast management company for busy individuals and businesses. Word Podcasting handle all the work in podcasting, so you just record your podcast and take it smoothly like I do. See you guys.